Okay. Hey, what's going on, good people? It's Gardner Douglas, your Oyster Ninja, and today we got Mr. Kevin Joseph on the hotline. And today is International Oyster Day. Is that right, Mr. Joseph?
That is correct.
So for the folks that don't know, International Oyster Day is something fairly new, right?
Right.
And not National Oyster Day, but International Oyster Day. So, for the folks also who don't know Mr. Kevin Joseph, well known in the oyster community. He's got the Empire Oyster and National Oyster Week, and you got a whole bunch of stuff going on, man, which is great.
Yeah, New York Oyster Week is sort of how I got, a, I identified a way into the oyster world, or sort of began to identify myself and position myself and with oysters, and begin to work with oysters was when we started that 2012 with New York Oyster Week, which is interesting because a lot of people feel like, well, I should say, my perception is that some people feel like maybe I'm most interested in celebrating oysters from New York because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a New Yorker. But the truth is that, New York Oyster Week was originally designed to celebrate the history, culture, cuisine, economy, and ecology of oysters in New York. But that includes oysters from other places that are consumed in New York. So there's an oyster culture here in this oyster town, but that oyster culture certainly includes and celebrates oysters from everywhere we can receive oysters from. So Canada, Mexico, New Zealand, and the United States. So, of course, there's a bias, like any place. Seattle or Vancouver would have a bias towards West Coast oysters, meaning, they're just easier and cheaper to get,
Mm-hmm.
local stuff. And of course, New York has the same. But New York Oyster Week was really always designed to be something. It was really a spotlight on oyster culture in New York City, and the state of New York, but not just about New York oyster producers or New York oyster shuckers or chefs that feature oysters or seafood. So that's how it got started, or how I got started with oysters
Mm-hmm.
in the latest incarnation. I grew up in a seafood restaurant family, so I've always been around seafood and oysters. But
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, how did your love even start with the whole oyster thing? Like, because it takes a sort of weird person, as we're called now, to even eat oysters, and then like to go from eating oysters to shucking oysters to cooking oysters. How did you get your love? Like, where did it come from?
I think it was just innate. It was in my DNA. Having grown up in East Hampton, Long Island, long before it was cool, I like to add. 1970 to 1971, or 1970 to 1977. When I lived there as a kid, I went to elementary school there. My playground
Mm-hmm.
was the little marshes and swamps and bays around 3 Mile Harbor and Springs, which is a little village within the town of East Hampton. And my family had a restaurant there in Springs, and my grandparents had a restaurant in Montauk. So, I'm sure I was eating oysters at 5, 6 years old. I'm sure of it. And then my grandmother had a seafood restaurant in South Florida for a long time, in Bonita Springs, Florida, near Naples. And, all my first jobs were in that restaurant, from dishwashing to prep cook to waiter to everything, bartender, everything. So I was always around oysters, always loved oysters. And it was in 2011, I caught not a podcast, a TED Talk. That was
Mm-hmm.
Kate Orff was talking about oyster texture. So architecture, or subaquatic or intertidal architecture
Oh
using
yeah,
oyster
yeah, I saw that one.
structure. Yeah. And I realized, I just became fascinated with how, oyster reefs were this integral part of ecosystems, and I hadn't really thought about them in a New York City or New York Harbor, location. At the time, I was living in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and my view was down the Hudson towards the Harbor to the Statue of Liberty. And so I was sitting there watching this thing, looking down that river thinking, why don't we recycle oyster shells to use in reef reconstruction? And why hasn't anyone created New York Oyster Week? I think it was around the time of Fashion Week. It was like late August or early September. And I said, all right, I'm going to start writing up, what is the New York Oyster Week? So I did that and very quickly got some people involved and got some support from people that mattered. And we began to do it. And I've been telling this story a lot lately because I'm running an oyster bar in Jersey right now. Right. People ask me all the time, how did you get into oysters? And I say, well, I created New York Oyster Week. And then, I was sort of faking it before I knew what the hell I was talking about, in the sense that I knew what it was. I knew what I wanted it to be, and I was trying to get other people to support it, and they were, and it began, and it happened, and it happened again. We've done it 8 years in a row in the last 2 weeks of September. But like that first year, I didn't know then what I know about oysters now. I'm like you, we're like encyclopedias for oysters and aquaculture and marine biology now. But when I first started it, I didn't really know that much. And then what I quickly did is I started reading every book I could as fast as I could. Now there's 10 more books that are out there. I'm sure you have them all too. But, I gave myself a PhD in oysters through that process because I felt like I needed to earn and deserve what people were saying about me. Oh, he's the oyster king of New York. And I would always wince when I would hear that. Because I felt like, gee, man, just take it easy. There's a lot of people out there that deserve that kind of accolade much more than me. But, I'm just a part of the whole puzzle. I'm trying to be a messenger and an ambassador for oysters and aquaculture and the people that grow oysters and trade in oysters and shuck them and serve them. I'm just one of a big tribe. And but to answer your question, that's how it started.
So let me ask you, man, what was some of your first books you read?
Big Oyster was probably the first. You know it, obviously. The Big Oyster is about New York City and its history with oysters. Not the Big Apple, the Big Oyster.
Right.
I think I read Geography of Oysters, Rowan Jacobson's book. And then I think pretty quickly read Patrick McMurray's book. I think it's initially called Consider the Oyster. It looks like there's there's a new edition. I think it's called Oyster Companion. It looks very similar, but I think it's like a new edition. Those were the first three, and I said, ooh, there's some stuff to know here that if you know it, you can sort of be to oysters what a sommelier is to wine. And those guys that are somms, those men and women, they're getting paid and they have a value proposition that they can bring to a restaurant and to a consumer, in that they understand the entire life cycle of a wine from before a grape grows, what do they call it, from a clipping to a vine to a grape to the fermentation process to how it ages to how it's put on a wine by the glass list to how it's served in a restaurant to what the temperatures are that you keep wine at, all of that expertise, and what's going to be worth something more, what's going to appreciate, what's not, what's to be drank now, what's to be what should you wait 20 years to drink. So I realized there's an opportunity here to become that expert. And that's when I started to read every other book I could and just do every bit of research I could and talk to every grower I could and visit every farm that I could. In 2013, I was asked to be the national sales director for Blue Island Oyster Company. And that was great because that allowed me to go into the city in New York City and talk to chefs and train staff. By then I had really educated myself. And also shucking, like knowing how to shuck and shuck different kinds of oysters, how to store oysters, how to, what are the varieties that you should have on hand if you want to be an elite oyster destination. So, you don't have 5 oysters from one place that are all kind of similar. So treating it all just exactly like a somm would treat a wine by the glass list or a wine by the bottle list for a restaurant, and training, like the Peninsula Hotel and the Waldorf Astoria. Like, great chefs were asking me to help them. And it was great. And some of those relationships I maintain today. Some of those chefs have moved on to other places in other cities. So that's sort of what I saw as the opportunity to be of value to others and create some value for myself. And so I hope that people appreciate that. I think it's pretty common in the small world in which we live for people to sort of say, well, he doesn't know this, or they don't know that, or I don't know about that guy. And look, I'm just trying to be one of the good guys that's out there being a great ambassador for oysters and open them beautifully and, be honest and get people to understand and appreciate what their preferences are so that they know how to order them and they know how to eat them and they don't feel silly or intimidated in a restaurant ordering them, or they don't feel like, gee, these are too expensive. I don't get it. I want people to go, I want people to realize, like, well, that Taylor Kumamoto is different than a California Kumamoto, is different than a Mexican Moto. And that's why it's worth this amount and those are not. But I see a lot of people all the time like, oh, I've had oysters. I'm not that into oysters. Exactly. I'm like, yes, because you had one oyster once. It was probably raw. It was served on a paper plate at some seafood shack somewhere. And, of course, it didn't impress you. Try this one that's ice cold with a beautiful mignonette on it and, came from pristine waters and is big and fat and juicy. And, oh, by the way, it's right now. It's at prime oyster season. Everything's quality is great right now. And this is the time when we can turn people that are on the fence about oysters into oyster lovers. And we're doing that every day, which is great.
So I think you just described, you talked a little bit about the sommelier, but you're coining a new term, oyster education.
Yeah, Mermmelier is, it's actually not that new. I think I first articulated that phrase in about 2013, late 2013, early 2014. I basically went out on a limb and said, I'm going to basically declare myself this. And I'm going to defend that description of my skill set and my value proposition to others by defining what it is. So, like I just said, to be to oysters what a sommelier is to wine is precisely what I am. And when you really study what somms, how they're trained, and what they do, and what their value proposition is, it's a hell of a lot more than try this. This tastes good.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how the entire industry works together as a whole, from like I said, from the clipping to the wine by the glass, at the fine end and at the middle end and at the low end of the dining scale. So, understanding and navigating all of that with oysters is what a Mermmelier does. I do kind of take issue with some of the folks, although I haven't really called anybody out on it. When people refer to me as an oyster sommelier or others that use that term, it just sends chills up my spine because you can't be an oyster somm.
Right.
I get why maybe it's easier to pronounce, it's more familiar, but you can't be a baseball quarterback and you can't be a football pitcher. You can't be an oyster sommelier.
Well, if you want to call somebody out, let it be on the Oyster Ninja podcast,
No, I appreciate. Look, like I said, we're all rowing in the same direction.
Right.
And we're all trying to be a rising tide. And so I respect everybody out there that is, a part of that community. And I want us all to be successful because it's really important to all of us that are party to the oyster, because, listen, it ain't going to get any cheaper to produce an oyster. And the consumer is not going to be that much more excited to spend more than, $2, $3, $4, $5 in some cases dollars on a single oyster. In New York City, the top quality Kumamoto can be $6. A great East Coast oyster that's beautifully farmed, a boutique craft artisanal oyster from somebody who knows what they're doing from pristine waters, and you can name 100 of these folks, is easily $3.50. That's a lot.
Wow.
You do that cost per pound of that protein, you're up there with Wagyu beef. So they're very expensive in a sense, but they're loaded with nutrition. They're loaded with, all kinds of, great stuff nutritionally. And as we know, farming oysters is ecologically beneficial. So if you're going to eat something and, have it be low in calories and high in nutrition, you get more out of half a dozen oysters than you do out of a cheeseburger. That's for sure. So I want to be a rising tide with everybody else. And so the point of Mermmelier is to sort of define how, sort of trying, ultimately, I want to create some sort of an academy where we can train shuckers and we can train chefs, especially younger folks, to come into this world and know what they're doing, know what they're talking about, know where to buy from, know how to store stuff, know how to treat it safely. I mean, you are talking about an uncooked product, so, safety can be, safety is always an important thing with food handling, but particularly with something that's raw. So food safety, and again, being somebody who can be articulate about why am I paying $3 for for a gram of protein? Well, because it's as nutritious as a pound of beef. Maybe we don't need to eat so much as a society, particularly for dinner. Certainly a lot of obesity out there, a lot of malnutrition. So I find oysters to be a great form of nutrition, not just for your body, your muscles, your organs, but for your brain. It's tremendous brain food, loaded with omega-3s and highly soluble amino acids. I mean, there's iodine. It's a food that delivers to us things that almost all other foods cannot. And even vitamins and supplements don't do a very good job at. So, for the same dollar, you're getting more nutrition for your brain and your body. And, again, that's another part of what Mermmelier used to be a advocate for. So everything I do is about trying to maintain that perception of and raise that perception of value in the consumption of oysters, because they're not getting any cheaper to produce and they're not getting any cheaper at the restaurant. One of the best things to do is to try and teach people how to shuck, because if you can shuck at home, you can buy a bag of oysters direct from lots of growers, and now you're at you're at $150 for 100 oysters. Now you're at and you get them cheaper than that. But let's say you spend $150, retail to have them shipped to your door. Eat those 100 oysters with a few friends. You just saved $400 versus going out to eating them at a restaurant with the cost of oysters at a restaurant and tax and tip. Now, having said that, I run a raw bar. I don't want people to stop coming in and but I do want people to eat more oysters, and I certainly want them to eat more of them at home. So learning how to shuck is an important part of what we would do with this academy that we hopefully one day will create. And just teaching people how to present oysters beautifully and speak eloquently about them table side or raw bar side is an important part of all that. So I hope people out there that listen to this podcast that might be interested in getting involved in shucking and hospitality. It's really a hospitality kind of training program.
Oh, yeah.
Might reach out to me and say, hey, I'd like to learn a little bit more, because I'll tell you, in the years to come, myself and the people I'm involved with, we definitely want to open more oyster bars and do a better job than we've seen some places that serve oysters do. And we need guys. We need men and women who can shuck and can speak eloquently and can tell you the difference between oyster A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. And a lot of places, as you know, Gardner, you go in a restaurant and say, what kind of oysters you got? And you get a blank look from a waiter.
Yeah, that's the worst.
East Coast and West Coast. And, that doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't make me want to give you $3 an oyster.
Right.
Free dance there, right? So you need to have people that are handling oysters, serving them and presenting them to be articulate so that we can, continue to help that industry grow because it is so important. And this is really the whole point of all of this for me is my mission is to help to find ways that people appreciate this as a food. Get in their belly with this message. And the message is, that tastes good, right? Yeah, that tastes good. Okay, that makes you feel good, right? Yeah, that makes me feel good. Let's, then they start asking questions. It's like this guided discovery process that for me is standing at an oyster bar shucking oysters happens 50 times a week. Where did it come from? Are farmed oysters okay? They start asking questions and I start giving correct answers. And what ends up happening is people will come away from me appreciating oysters much more and appreciating the places they come from much more. So I'm talking about coastal marshlands, estuaries, tidal places. These are the places that I grew up in. This is my childhood. My playground was a marsh, not a swing set. I just was in the woods and I was in the muck. And fishing and catching frogs and snails and boiling periwinkles and clamming and oystering and stuff like that as a little kid. So if we don't protect and preserve and restore these fragile ecosystems, we're not going to have this food. And, that gets you in the belly. And so I hope if nothing else, one day I have a tiny legacy. It might be that I was an advocate for these places and these people that rely on these places to grow this food that's really actually very good for us, ecologically beneficial, and that's good for all of us. And that's the whole point of understanding oysters, being an advocate for them, creating things like New York Oyster Week, International Oyster Day, the Oyster Hood. All of these are vehicles to sort of, forgive the pun or the phrase, but spread the gospel of the oyster.
Right. Now, speaking of vehicles, let's talk a little bit about the shuck truck and Stern and Bow.
Yeah, Stern and Bow is a restaurant in New Jersey, in Closter, New Jersey, that hired me as a consultant to come in and create a great raw bar program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did, and it's been great. Great group of people, and right out of the gate, we had a market there. Northern Bergen County is very affluent. It's a bedroom community for New York City. People drive into the city or take the bus or the train in the city every day. It's just an affluent. It's kind of like Arlington, Virginia might be, I would say, or Frederick, Maryland. Maybe Frederick's too far, but these outer bedroom communities. So the owner, Russ Stern, felt like, there is no oyster bar. If we had a great oyster program, that would be something we could differentiate with. And boy, was he right. So, last week, I think we did a couple thousand oysters, and we've been averaging that. And it's a small restaurant. It's only 150 seats. It's not a huge restaurant. So it's been going really great. We actually found a pearl. The guests found a pearl in a Taylor Kumamoto, which is, to anyone's knowledge, unprecedented. So,
yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on. Because you got, right.
I swear to God, if I wasn't standing there and watched the guy pull it out of his mouth, Anton, I would have said the same thing.
Right.
And then I looked at the thing and I said, "Holy shit, that is a pearl." It had a little nipple on it. It was like it was almost teardrop shaped, but it was really white. It was tiny. We've since lost it. Can't find the goddamn thing, but it got. I realized this is a story because I don't like the odds of finding a pearl in an oyster, a Kumamoto from Washington. I never heard of it. I've certainly heard of pearls and oysters, and I found a couple, but I never from that part of the world. So I called Wes Taylor at Taylor Shellfish, and I said, "Hey man, we found a pearl in the Taylor Kumamoto. Have you ever heard of it?" And he goes, I don't think so. Let me ask around. So he asked around. He called me back the next day. He's like, "No one's ever found one in one of our Kumos." So to our knowledge, it was the first oyster, Taylor Kumamoto to ever have an oyster in it. So we wrote a press release and it went out, and the story got picked up around the world. I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
it was crazy. Millions and millions and millions of impressions. We were the number one story with that on Apple News for like 15 minutes. It was hilarious. Fox did a coverage on it, and they got picked up. And it was like the number one
Beautiful thing.
Yeah. And then the shark truck is just, a 1967 Chevy van. If you want to see pictures of it, you can go to EmpireOyster.com. People think I serve oysters out of it. It's not a food truck. It's just a truck. It's just a fun goof driving around. It's got my logo on it. It's got 2 taps in it. So I'll pull it up to an event, and we'll be serving beers out of the van, and we'll have a raw bar set up in front of it. So it really functions mostly as a back bar for an oyster bar where we have a place where we can shuck and serve oysters at generally a private event. But I've never gotten organized enough to do it, but I really want to take it to some football games and do what I call oyster gating.
Nice.
So, have somebody get 10 guys together and be like, all right, we're going to this game or that game, and just have our own private thing, because you can't vend at those things. They'll kick you out. But I haven't gotten organized enough to do that. Like everything in my, in my world, there's so many things I want to do, and I just, you got to make money.
Right, yeah.
Do this whole time, you gotta find the path to revenue, and along the way, you gotta do cool things that are fun, that are exciting, that again lead back to the message, which is oysters are great. People that grow them are great. Oyster farming is great. It's important. It's critical. There's a whole culture and way of life that these people can maintain that is important. That's just, I don't know what, it's just so important to me to help people be able to stay in the towns they grew up in. And maybe they can't be a fisherman in the bay anymore, but they can certainly grow oysters. We're seeing that all over the country. So they can still stay in that town they grew up in and raise their family. They want to do it. And to me, that's really important.
All right, man. So the time is now. Let's jump into International Oyster Day, and we're celebrating that today, and I hope everybody is eating oysters. And I guess what's the biggest difference between international, or why should we have International Oyster Day today instead of National Oyster Day, a few months back?
Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. And again, I think, like with the Mermmelier thing, I think some people say, well, that's very self-serving of this guy to go out and declare himself something, and isn't he special? Well, you can have that opinion, but really what I'm trying to do is be a positive force for other people. And this is another example of that. So International Oyster Day was something I came up with in 2014, I want to say. I think we did our first event with it on November 18th, 2015. We've done a few events. We don't do something every year. We were going to do something this year, and just time got away from us. And it's also, today's a Monday, and it's not exactly a day that people want to go out and spend money and eat oysters on a Monday. But it's really important to me to try and change this National Oyster Day thing, which has been August 5th, try and get everybody in the industry to rally around this change. Because as we all know, oysters are in their prime season right now. I mean, this is prime time for oysters in the Northern Hemisphere, and almost every oyster variety is available, and all 5 oyster species are available, and oysters are at their peak quality. All those varieties and species are at their peak quality. So if there's a time of the year to introduce somebody to oysters or to celebrate oysters, it's certainly not August 5th, where you can't get certain oysters. Certain regions are wholly or completely shut down to harvesting. You can't get Olympias. You can't get Ballones. Kumos and West Coast stuff can be kind of creamy because they're coming out of the spawn or they're still in it. That's right. Not entirely the most appealing time. I know West Coast growers that don't even harvest in the summer because it's not the time that they want to showcase their oysters. I know East Coast oyster growers that don't harvest in the summer because it's not the time. They may have other priorities too, running a hatchery or taking time with their family. But November 18th is far and away, or I should say mid-November or early November is far and away a superior time for oyster quality. And I think I just dialed in this date because it's I felt like it was far enough before Thanksgiving that, you know, you could still get people's attention before they get sucked into the holiday, you know, maelstrom that is the holidays. And we're deep enough in the prime oyster season that you can get everything, and everything's at its peak quality. Even and especially the southern stuff, the great oysters of the Gulf and South Carolina, and now they're starting to be stuff in Georgia and Florida.
Let me ask you, man. So, in your definition, what would be a peak oyster?
Well, I think any oyster has its peak. I don't mean to say there's one oyster that's superior to another. I think that's subjective. Right. I mean, I love Olympias, and I love Kumos, and I love Virginicas. I mean, I love, you know, oysters are like, you know, songs. You know, you like different ones for different reasons at different times. So I don't mean to say that there's one oyster that's better than another.
I like the way you put that.
I do mean to say very clearly that, and every grower and any marine biologist knows this. I mean, this is a better time for the quality of the meat. It's more opaque. They're thicker. They're full of glycogen. They're feeding still, and they're getting ready for winter. They're a bear standing at a stream, and there's 1,000 salmon swimming by. They're just getting fat for winter, and this is the time. Now, that's going to change in January when they, you know, and the further north you go, obviously you know this, they get a little weaker, and they start the quality begins to be not as good through the early spring until there's food in the water again. That doesn't mean they're not safe. It just means they're not as opaque, they're not as crisp, they're not as plump, they're not as big and fat. You know, like now's the prime time. You know, they're way past the spawn, and they've been pounding. You know, eating. Water temperatures are dropping. You know, it's just the prime time. So this is peak oyster season, but that doesn't mean that one oyster is better than another. Everyone has their preferences. In Australia, it's the opposite, you know, or New Zealand. This is their summer, so their oysters are spawning, and spawning, for everyone to know, is not just that it makes an oyster creamy, which some people do like, but it also, a spawning oyster, I've heard this from pretty reliable sources. Oyster, when they're spawning, they ejaculate basically 90 times a day. So you do that for 30 days, you're going to be worn out. I would think. Maybe not you.
A little bit.
Yeah, it'll wear you out, right? So oysters, after they come out of the spawn, you know, they're creamy during the spawn, and then they come out of the spawn, they're kind of, you've seen it, shocking. You've seen, you know, like in September,
for sure.
Oysters are like, gee, why is this oyster so thin? Or really August maybe. And like, again, why would you celebrate the oysters at a time when they're not, you can't get them all, and they're not at peak quality? So I mean, I don't want to shit on anybody for celebrating National Oyster Day, but it was created by people that didn't understand oysters for their own selfish reasons, and it just got picked up by the media, and it doesn't serve anybody in the oyster community for us to celebrate oysters at a time unless you run a restaurant in a big city when it's slow during August, because everyone's at the beach. Another reason to celebrate oysters in October or November is, you know, what a great time to create oyster tourism, where we send, you know, where people go out to oyster farms in November and learn about oysters and enjoy oysters at the beach when it's not season at the beach anymore. So, you know, we can fill a few more beds in a bed and breakfast. We can fill a few more seats in a restaurant. We can get an oyster grower, you know, to put a few more bucks in their pocket by giving a tour. And it's prime time. And when they take that oyster out of the water at an oyster farm and eat it when it's at its peak, it's going to enchant that person much more. So, again, it's like, well, the beach communities or the rural communities or the coastal communities where oysters are growing, they don't need any more people coming in August. They need people to come in the shoulder season. So it's another way to generate some additional benefit for people that benefit from oysters and aquaculture who aren't growers. They're just people that might own restaurants or bed and breakfast. They might own a convenience store in Martha's Vineyard or on the Cape or wherever. And there's another person in town that spends $20 in their shop that day. So there's all these residual effects that are beneficial to celebrating oysters a little bit later. So I wish I weren't so busy with the restaurant. I wish I had more time this year to put something more together and a little bit more of a campaign. But I appreciate you having me on and mentioning it, because this is not something that I'm in a hurry to do. For the next 20 years, I'm going to be, spewing the gospel on November 18th. The big step forward we took this year is I have an identity for it, and it's on the website, theoysterhood.com, that anybody can take, or it's on our Instagram. Anybody can take and use it. And this year I translated it into like 14 languages. So it's in there in Japanese, it's in there in Latvian, it's in there in French, and a lot of different Dutch. So if you're somebody in one of those countries and you want to celebrate it, you can go grab the logo and throw it up and say, hey, it's International Oyster Day. And then the last reason it's important to celebrate it as an international thing is because it is an international food. It's not an American food. It's not a Canadian food. It's not a French food. Oysters are something that have been eaten by human beings since we stood on 2 feet for 200,000 years. It's a food that's been consumed in every nation since we stood on 2 feet. And it's because of that, it's a singular food in the history of mankind. And that's why I think it's important to showcase its international, the common thread that many nations share with that kind of food. It's also been consumed raw and on the half shell in all of those places for all of that time. Very few other foods can you say something about that, by the wealthiest and the poorest as well. So very few foods have this sort of position in the history of humanity that oysters do. And for that reason, I think it's worthy of, celebrating it internationally, not just nationally. It's not an American thing. It's not a Canadian thing.
That's right, man.
Can you feel it, brother? Do you feel it?
Say again?
Do you feel it, brother?
For sure.
I know you do.
For sure. I'm about this oyster life, man. That's where my joy comes from, man. I mean, besides the wife and the kids, but.
What is it for you? What gets you? How did you get into oysters, and why are you so passionate about them?
I'm gonna tell you, man. I'm gonna be honest, and I tell my story all the time. I initially got into this because of the money, not for any love or for any.
For shucking oysters, working in a restaurant.
No. So, all right, what happened was, my dad shucks oysters, right? So, and this is gonna be a good story for anybody who hasn't heard it. So, my dad shucks oysters, and he used to compete. He competes every now and then now. So he took me up to St. Mary's one year, and he had the competition. And hey, you wanna try? You wanna get into amateur? And I didn't even know how to shuck then. So I'm like, no, I'm playing it cool, the cool guy, And I was like, no, I'm good. So he competes. He places 5th that year, I think, which for me, I had no clue that was even big, to say he's like 5th in the country. So, we go home, and so he's shucking oysters in the backyard. And then again, he asked me, hey, you want to learn how to shuck? Next year you can compete. I said, no, I'm good. I'm all right. So he come back. And when he comes back, though, he has a pocket full of money. So I'm like, how you shuck these things? Like, so I'm all in that. I want to make some money too. I didn't realize that it was actual money involved in it. It was just hard, dirty work, because we were shucking wild oysters. And so I started shucking, and it took me a little bit to get it, but I got it. And of course, with, him behind me, and, the way he taught me, he didn't teach me, he didn't give me everything. So I kind of had to figure it out. And then he was like, oh, you finally got that part, so let's move on to the next. So it was like that. So I started doing events with him, and I started, going out and doing little stuff here, little stuff there. And it just caught, man, like I just caught the bug. When I started doing events, I realized that, because I was always shy, timid, laid back. But when I got behind that knife and started talking to people, and I started learning about oysters, that's where it came from. Started learning. People look at you differently because you have something to offer. So I like being that guy who knew what I was talking about. And then So I deployed in 2013, 2014. I came back home from Afghanistan. I was like, I want a stress-free job.
Oh,
So
shit, no doubt about you.
yeah. So
Thank you,
I
man.
started. No, thank you for the support, man. So I started looking for oyster jobs. I was in Virginia Beach. Nobody was paying anything. So I started looking for jobs in D.C. And my girlfriend, now wife, she was up here. So I was like, well, even if they're not paying much, I'll go up and, shuck oysters and I'll be closer to her. So I started shucking at Rappahannock, and from there it was a wrap, man. They had me doing events for them. So I was like, hold on. I can do this. I've been doing this. I'm good. So let me just step out there. And I started doing my own thing, man. And with Instagram and social media, it just kind of took off.
Yeah, it's cool. I love it. I think it's awesome. And you and I have never met, for those listening.
Right.
And
No, I contacted you. I don't know if you remember, but I contacted you back in like 2015, I believe. And it was like Oyster Week, I think. And I was looking to come up there and shuck, but it just didn't work out. Yeah.
Well, I would love to be able to bring guys in from different parts of the country. And sometimes we do get growers that come to events, but it's expensive. You got to fly in, you got to get a hotel room. New York City is brutal and for expenses. And in September, it's like kind of prime time. So it's just an expensive place to go. And the numbers, we're trying to build something with the Oyster Hood, which is the entity that's a media company that produces New York Oyster Week. We're trying to produce this. We're trying to create this entity that can, be supported by beer, wine, spirits brands, luxury beer, wine, spirits brands, and, other luxury products, services, experiences, whether it's financial services or even timepieces or clothing companies. We need sponsors to come in and give us money to produce an event where they can have an activation and basically engage with oyster-loving consumers in a moment when they're consuming oysters and loving it,
Right.
And that's what it's all about. So, people ask me, how's it going? I say, good. Where trajectory is going the direction we want it to go. Am I getting rich? No. Have I even broken even on the investments I've made in websites and events and all this stuff? Probably not.
Right.
But I have seen a total change in how people perceive oysters in New York City and beyond. But, now people walk up to me and say, do you know they filter water? Do you know they create habitat? And I say, yeah. Oh, have you heard of Billion Oyster Project? That's my favorite. I'm like, heard of them? They're like, we were born in the same time. Like, New York Oyster Week and Billion Oyster Project literally came out into the world in like March, April, May of 2012. Right. And we immediately joined forces, and they recycle the shell, collect some of the shell from some of our events. And we give them space to tell their story, and we've had a great relationship. So, I love what those guys do, and they've been a big part of the whole thing. But I lost my track of thought a little bit. But the bottom line is that
good. It happens.
I'm trying to get more dollars from companies that want to. That was what I was saying. That want to support these great events where people that really care about something are there, and they're giving real money, and they've qualified themselves as a real consumer that's given us $80, $100 for unlimited oysters and great libations. And what a great time to give your message about how you care about aquaculture or coastal communities. What a great time to give your message to the consumer. So, in as much as you can help us continue to do that, that would be great. And in as much as I can bring guys from different parts of the country, whether they're growers or shuckers, to New York to be a part of that, we're always going to do our best to do that. It is not a charity, but it does support many beneficiaries over the years, primarily Billion Oyster Project. And, we're going to continue to ever grow. People say, how's your business going? I say good, because I don't say great or gangbusters, because that business for me is a life. I don't have a business plan. I have a life plan. I'm not
Right.
to make, a pile of money tomorrow. I'm in this to, as I say, our slogan with Empire Oyster is to raise the raw bar. I want people to appreciate oysters more, and then, I'll go and make more money shucking oysters and consulting with restaurants and operating my own oyster bars than I will doing the events. But I need those events to help people appreciate oysters more, and then they'll go to my oyster bar and others, and it becomes a rising tide that benefits many people other than myself. So it's an important part of the ecosystem that we are creating, and I appreciate your enthusiasm for it. And, I look forward to participating with you more in the future. I'd love there to be a DC Oyster Week or Capital Oyster Week one day.
Right.
It just takes time, takes money. It's like a full-time job for 2 months, and life sucks for me in August and September sometimes, but yes, it doesn't feel like work when you're passionate about something and you see results and you see change.
Yeah. It's all a lifestyle, man. And I feel like anybody who deals with this oysters on the, level that we do, and you're way past me, but like it's a lifestyle, And like you said, it's not all about the money or right now. It's about what's going forward. What's it going toward?
Yeah, it's about food and protecting and preserving and restoring habitat and culture and opportunities, especially economic opportunities for people in rural places that, they can't fish anymore because there's bans on this or there's bans on that, but they can still grow an oyster. I mean, that's just, we can't lose that. I mean, you lose that and you sterilize these coastal communities and they become a bunch of like second home communities for people that are never there. Jet skiing all over the place.
Let me ask you, man. I know you've talked about Rowan Jacobson and Patrick Murray. Who else do you think is like in this oyster industry? Who are some people to look at, or who are some people that you looked at coming up, or
Well, I really respect the Malinowski family because Fisher Island Oysters, because Steve is sort of like the godfather of aquaculture in New York. And Fisher's Island, for those that don't know, it's sort of this it's this beautiful secluded island just south of Connecticut, just east of the northern tip of Long Island. And I'm pretty sure that he was figuring out how to hatch and nurse oysters 25, 30 years ago, and now they grow great oysters and ship them direct. And Pete runs the Billion Oyster Project, which he created with Murray Fisher. So those guys are definitely kind of like heroes. Perry Rosso is another one in Rhode Island who's, he's an all-star. He's an oyster, as I say. He's got Matunic Oyster Bar, which is, if anyone ever's driving through Rhode Island and they don't stop at Matunic Oyster Bar, they're missing, one of the great elite oyster destinations in the world. Oysters are harvested from like half a click away. It's a beautiful place. Speaking of which, like Hog Island is another group. John Finger, who happens to be from Cutchogue Island, he's kind of a hero. He moves out to California and figures that they're going to start an oyster farm. I mean, what a maniac. But if you go to Marshall, California, and you go to Tomales Bay and Point Reyes National Monument or Park, I mean, that is one of the all-time greatest places in the world to eat oysters and see oyster aquaculture and how they're processed. Their facility there, you don't really see the farm. You don't really see farming from what do they call it? There's like a yard there, a big like waterfront area where you can grill oysters and there's picnic tables and stuff. And you don't really see the aquaculture happening there, but you do see the oysters come in. You see them being processed. And it's a really cool experience. So I really respect him and people like Ian Jeffords with Penn Cove and the whole Taylor Shellfish family and Shelton. They're 125-year-old business. I mean, most oyster farms, as you know, are 10 years old or less.
Right,
Here's
right.
a company that I believe had the first seed for Kumamoto, the first Sigamiya seed from Japanese immigrants was brought there and cultivated there in and around Shelton, Washington. I believe that's basically an heirloom Kumamoto. So a lot of respect for those folks, and just so many. There's too many people to name, but
Right.
the Oyster South folks, they're like really focused on bringing supporting the local family oyster grower. This is a nascent industry in the South. Talking about those places where you used to be able to do one thing and you can't do that anymore because you either overfished it or there's too much environmental pressure or there's too much residential. You can't be a crabber anymore or you can't be a gill netter anymore. So now guys are turning to oyster aquaculture, and this organization is supporting them through great events and education and seminars, and so that's another. So there's a lot of folks out there. There's some links to some great organizations on the oysterhood.com, and then I have a nonprofit which honestly we haven't done much with, but it's called Oysters Unlimited, and it's oystersunlimited.org. So we are a 501c3 based in North Carolina, but we just haven't done much except built a website where I've put up some content about some great organizations to look at if you're interested in learning, about oyster shell recycling or coastal erosion mitigation through oyster reef restoration, that kind of estuarine ecology and restoration projects that are going on. It's starting to become recognized as, hey, wait, this is the right way to do it instead of building another seawall or bulkhead, which just moves energy from one place to another, just trading problems.
This sounds like another podcast. That's a whole other podcast.
Well, there's a guy. That's another guy. He's fun to talk to. Clammerhead started. Clammerhead.
Oh yeah.
You know
Man, I know of him. I don't know him. We've talked, and I was supposed to get some of those emeralds up, but I haven't tried them yet. So,
well, those oysters only turn green in February. January, February, March, and then there's just some kind of plankton that exists in that area at that time. This is Morehead City, North River, North Carolina, and they come and go. But he's a character, and he and a scientist from the University of North Carolina Marine Sciences, Dr. Niels Lundquist, started a company called Sandbar Oyster Bar, and a Sandbar Oyster Company, and they're basically creating innovative technologies and techniques for creating oyster reef restoration projects that municipalities or counties or states or even private citizens can install that, in my opinion, are ecologically friendly and environmentally beneficial, and just kind of the smart way to do it versus, building more bulkheads or putting cement domes in the water that maybe some oysters will settle on before seaweed or other fouling happens. But he's a good guy to chat with. He's got this great North Carolina drawl.
Right.
I think there's a link to a movie we made about him and the company on the oysterhood.com too.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of great folks doing great stuff out there, and I'm proud of them all. And many of them I'm very proud to call friends. And you're one of them, my brother.
Appreciate you, man. And I appreciate you coming on the Oyster Ninja podcast, man, on International Oyster Day.
Long overdue.
Yes, sir, indeed. So, where can people find you at, man? The raw bars, the websites, the social media?
I wish I was, there are many out there that are so much better at the social media, the Instagram and the Facebook than I am. But, I have it all. I don't tweet, but at Kevin Joseph at Instagram. And if you Google Mermmelier, and that's spelled Mermmelier, so a lot like sommelier, I come right up. all my social media stuff. But there's EmpireOyster.com, OystersUnlimited.org, theOysterhood.com, and OysterWeek.com, which will lead you to NewYorkOysterWeek.com, and we still have a website up for Miami Oyster Week. We did that once. One day, like I said, I hope there's a Philly Oyster Week and a LA Oyster Week and a Vancouver Oyster Week, and all of these places, all these cities where we can have an Oyster Week, that we can continue to be a rising tide and bring value to everybody that's party to the whole ecosystem. But, just one guy. Yeah, just one guy. But if anyone is interested in talking to me about participating in that, please feel free to reach out. So at Kevin Joseph, at Empire_Oyster on Instagram. All this stuff is like, you Google any of those words, it's going to pop right up.
Hey man, that's what I'm learning about these SEOs, man, trying to get this social media right, man. So you got it going on.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have the patience for it, man. And my hands are always full of oysters too. That's the other. I can't stop what I'm doing half the time. I struck a beautiful oyster and I want to take a picture of it, but
right.
I got a bunch of things I'm also doing, like as far as like there's other oysters I got to shuck and other people I'm talking
right.
to. And in the moment, I can't stop, pick up my phone, take a picture of an oyster. Now I got to go wash my hands again because that drives me crazy when I see someone touch their phone and then shuck an oyster.
Right.
So I put my phone away when I'm in the moment, and then I don't know how people find the time for it. I respect it, but there must be a better way than I know of. But one day.
One day, man. One day we're going to be able to, afford people just to carry that camera around with us.
Yeah, right. To me, the most important thing for me has always been, I'd rather be shucking an oyster and handing it to somebody for them to eat than taking a picture of an oyster and writing about it. I mean,
right.
put it in someone's face versus
right.
putting it online. That's the end all be all, right? Deliver it to someone's mouth. So they can enjoy it versus, writing about it. But yeah, there's a place for it all. I do as much of it as I can. I wish I could do more.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm Gen X, I guess. I'm not a millennial. I need to be better at social media, but we'll work on that.
We'll work on that, man. I just want to say thank you, man, for coming on the podcast, man. And you're my first episodes for a while, so I'm feeling the bug again. So I'm gonna get back to it. And, we just had a baby and bought a house, and it's been a lot, man. Just work. So I got the bug again, and I'm trying to line up the next episode. So appreciate you.
Well, yeah. If you ever want some ideas, always shoot me a call or an email, and there might be somebody I could say, hey, maybe talk to this person. So.
Okay, that sounds great.
All right, brother. All right, man.
All right,
Thanks
man.
a lot for your time. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. Happy International Oyster Day, man.
Hey, thanks, pal. Cheers.
All right, bye.